Imagine for a moment that you had a choice: complete freedom from pain, complete freedom from fear, a state of absolute peace, love, and clarity, the exact state thousands of people who have experienced clinical death describe when they say they didn't want to come back. And alongside that, the choice to return to a body that will age, get sick, forget, to a life where you'll be betrayed, where you'll lose people close to you, where you'll feel real physical pain. Who in their right mind would choose the second option? Edgar Cayce, in his readings, ran into this exact question again and again, and he didn't answer with one beautiful phrase. He answered with a specific list of reasons, which we're going to go through today one by one, with real examples of what each one looks like in an actual human life. Let's start with what puzzled Cayce himself early in his work. If the soul, on a subtler plane of existence, is capable of experiencing pure love, boundless knowledge, and a complete absence of suffering, what's the point of voluntarily returning to a place where none of that is guaranteed? Cayce insisted. It's not about punishment, and it's not about illusion. It's that physical experience makes possible four specific things unavailable at any other level of existence. And the first one is the most practical. The first reason: to finish a specific, unresolved pattern. Cayce said that a soul carries with it not some abstract karmic cloud, but literally specific unfinished situations, like open browser tabs, to put it in modern terms. Not a general, I need to become better, but specifically, this connection with this particular person was never brought to completion. This fear was never faced head-on. This conversation never happened, even though it could have. The most thoroughly documented example of this kind in modern history is the case of a boy named James Leininger, who from the age of 2 described details of the death of a World War II pilot, the name of the aircraft carrier, the names of fellow servicemen, the circumstances of the battle, with a precision that his parents, initially deeply skeptical, couldn't explain through coincidence or family stories. When they checked the details, it turned out that a real pilot with exactly that history had actually existed and had died exactly the way the boy described. Cayce would have explained it this way: this soul wasn't forced back by some outside power. It returned because its path, cut short in the air over the Pacific, remained unfinished, and part of its consciousness literally kept searching for a way to complete what had been started, with such force that this unfinished business broke through the veil of forgetting in a 2-year-old child who physically couldn't have read or heard about any of it. The second reason: to gain something that can only be obtained through a real, uncertain choice. This is the most unusual part of Cayce's teaching, and it's important here to understand the mechanics, not just the pretty phrase. On subtler levels of existence, the soul knows everything instantly and completely. There's no separation there between the one who perceives and what is perceived, which means lying or betraying is impossible, because there's no real alternative. In a physical body, everything is different. You don't know how things will turn out. You can cheat and not get caught. You can betray someone and come out ahead. And it's precisely in the moment when you have a genuine opportunity to act badly, without consequences, that your choice to act well carries a weight that doesn't exist and can't exist where there's simply no other way to be. A real case: the owner of a small construction company in Texas discovered that a supplier had accidentally undercounted a large shipment of materials by an amount that could literally have saved his business, which was on the verge of bankruptcy. No one would ever have known about the mistake. He called and reported it himself. He later explained it simply: I couldn't have lived with myself knowing I made that choice only because I could get away with it. Cayce would have called this exactly the unit of experience worth descending into a body for. Not a choice made because there was no other option, but a choice made because he could have acted differently and didn't. This is that very doubt despite certainty, which, according to Cayce, is completely unavailable to a consciousness that has no access to uncertainty in the first place. The third reason: service available only here and nowhere else. Cayce maintained that on subtler planes, helping another being happens instantly, through direct transmission of understanding. Pain is essentially healed by the mere presence of love, with no delay. In the physical world, that kind of speed doesn't exist. Here, help requires time, the one resource that can't be bought, returned, or borrowed. An illustration of this is the story of a man who spent nearly 20 years caring for his wife through a severe form of dementia, who gradually forgot even his name. On the surface, this looks like a decade-long tragedy with no visible meaning. But in an interview given near the end of this journey, he said something remarkably close to Cayce's own words. By the time his wife no longer recognized his face, he understood what he was doing wasn't so she would remember it. It mattered in itself, regardless of whether anyone else ever witnessed it. In his own words, it was precisely those years, stripped of recognition and gratitude, that taught him to love in a way he never knew how to before, not for a response, but simply because he chose to love. This, in Cayce's terms, is a form of care that cannot be created where everything is already perfect. It requires limitation, exhaustion, and time that doesn't come back, meaning it requires an actual physical body. The fourth reason, forgetting itself, as the condition that makes everything above genuine. This is where Cayce departs from most spiritual systems, which treat the loss of memory of past lives as a tragedy or a fall. Cayce called it not a mistake, but a necessary condition. If a soul, entering a body, remembered absolutely everything, every past life, the full scope of its own journey, the complete map of cause and effect, every decision made here would stop being a choice and become instead the replaying of an already known script. The veil of forgetting exists precisely so that the first, second, and third reasons, closing a pattern, choosing under real uncertainty, serving without any guarantee of recognition, remain genuine rather than being the foregone conclusion of omniscience. This is exactly why, Cayce said, the hardest periods of life so often turn out, afterward, to be what a person calls a point of genuine growth. Not because suffering is valuable in itself, but because it's precisely in the moment when you don't know how things will end, and you still choose not to grow bitter and not to shut down. That exactly what all four reasons point to actually happens, the very thing for which the soul descends into a physical body again and again. This changes the question you may have started watching this video with. Not, why is this so hard for me right now? But, which of these four things am I possibly completing at this very moment? An unresolved knot, a real choice with no guarantee, service with no recognition, or simply the experience of genuine uncertainty itself, unavailable through any other mode of existence. Write in the comments, which of these four reasons resonates with you the most, right at this point in your life.